Greetings, Almighty X. I haven't been live in a while, and I wanted to go live because I've been in an interesting conversation on X this evening with a couple of individuals talking about the situation involving the U.S. Interim Attorney Alina Habba and her replacement, which was or is Desiree Grace. And I'm surprised that it appears to me that maybe I'm not understanding the statutes involved, where people are just not. Um, I don't know if they're just ignoring the statutes, if they're refusing to recognize it, if they just don't understand how the law works. But it's kind of it's kind of intriguing to see the reaction that this is generating. As you know, Alina Habba was appointed interim U.S. Attorney by President Donald Trump, and there's a statute that specifically deals with the amount of time she's allowed to be the interim attorney before she's actually confirmed. Now, she hasn't been confirmed at this point, so that is kind of the inherent issue right now. But this statute limits her amount of time, and there's a lot of controversy with respect to who has the authority to replace her or to maintain her. Now, let's look at the statute and see exactly what the statute entails. The statute itself says, and I want us to focus on two parts of this specific statute, because what's happening here is Attorney Habba's term ends at the end of 120 days, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is July the 30th. After July the 30th, it supposedly her assistant Desiree Grace is supposed to take over. Now, this came about because of this statute that we see here on the screen. If we look at Section C, it says a person appointed as a United States Attorney under this section may serve until the earlier of one of these two sub points. For either the qualification of the United States Attorney for the district is appointed by the President under Section 541 of this title, or the expiration of 120 days after appointment by the Attorney General under this section. Basically, it's saying she has 120 days. Okay? Now, what happened here is that if Section D says that if the appointment expires under C2, which is the 120 days, the district court for that district may appoint a United States Attorney to serve until the vacancy is filled. The order of appointment by the court shall be filled with the clerk of the court. In other words, the court has the option of appointing an attorney temporarily at the end of the term, or as the term is to expire. This is what exactly happened. The court decided, they saw that there was no confirmation for Habba inside. They made a decision to appoint an interim, her assistant, as the acting interim attorney until another attorney could be appointed and confirmed. Now, what has happened is that the AG says, okay, that's not going to happen. I'm firing Grace and I'm reinstating Habba. Now, in this statute, we do not see anything that supports what Bondi did. So, according to the statute, Grace's appointment by the court stands. Okay, so and it stands. So unless the DOJ or AG Bondi challenges the decision of the court, the judges in court. Now, if she does, this statute that I just showed you will play against her. Now, how does this work? I did a little research and using some engines online, and I came up with this information, and I want to review it. Okay, this is with respect to um, what is the scenario, what is going on. Okay, so if we look at this in the background, it shows that the district judges appointed can appoint a U.S. Attorney General. A presidential appointee isn't confirmed by the Senate within 120 days. This statute was triggered on July 22nd, 2025, when the district judges appointed Grace as Habet's replacement. Okay, Bondi, Bondi, serving as Attorney General under the Trump administration, removed Grace hours later, calling the court's move rogue and emphasizing presidential authority. Now, there's certain legal tensions here that we have to acknowledge. Okay, the first one is the judicial authority. The statute gives judges the final way to appoint, basically, a replacement at the end of the term. Okay, and only a president, I think, has the authority to remove or do what needs to be done in this case. Alrighty. Now, another tension is within the executive authority, because Bondi says that what the judges did, it affects core Article 2 values. Now, the issue here is that what Article 2 core powers supersede or override the judiciary. Keep in mind, our government is three branches of government: the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. Each are separate branches. No one branch has power over the other. That's how our system of checks and balances works. So you can't say that the executive has power over the judiciary, nor can you say that the judiciary has power over the legislative or the legislative has power over the other two. They all work hand in hand under a system of checks and balances. Okay? So in this case, who's right and who's wrong? Well, legal precedent and statutory interpretation strongly favor the judicial appointment because of the statute that we saw earlier that says that they have the right to do it. Okay? The act of the AG firing Desiree Grace poses serious issues of separation of powers, contrary to the language of the statute, which is if you want to look it up, it is 28 U.S.C. 540, Section 546. That said, what's going to probably happen is that when Haba's term officially ends on the 30th, which is what is going to happen, what will happen is that Haba will show up to continue her work in the court. The court's going to say, you are no longer the appointed attorney. Desiree Grace is, and what's going to happen is Bondi and Haba are going to have to challenge it in the courts. That's what's going to happen. And when that happens, the first key precedent that is going to break AG Bondi is this statute of USC 28 Section 546, because this statute awards the standing to the court in appointing Desiree Grace. So it's a losing cause. Now, there was another instance where something like this occurred, but it never went fully through the court, so it's untested. Okay? This one may go the same process, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Haba is still the interim attorney. It means that by legal standing, Desiree Grace is the interim acting U.S. attorney for that court. And and will have the legal standing and the authority with which to do so. Now, is Pam Bondi and the DOJ, are they going to challenge this in the court? They could, but are they going to win? That is the important question. And given the legal precedents involved, there is no victory for them, none whatsoever. Okay, so if we ask who's right and who's wrong, basically by looking here, it says legal precedent and statutory interpretation strongly favor the judicial appointment as legitimate and protected from unilateral removal by the AG. Okay, another important point we have to know is that the AG's firing of Grace raises serious separation of powers issues and appears contrary to the clear language of that section, 28 U.S.C. section 546. If Bondi escalates this, as we were saying, a federal lawsuit or injunction would likely ensue, potentially landing before the Third Circuit of the Supreme Court. The bottom line here is that Grace's court-appointed tenure legally stands, unless the DOJ pursues and wins a courtroom challenge, which the odds are against them at this point. Bondi's firing action doesn't nullify, and this is very important, does not nullify the judge's appointments under existing law. Only the president can remove her per statute and customary executive limits. Now, I'm not going to go into those limits just right now, but there are certain limits that are there, and this would dictate what the president can and cannot do. All we can expect now is a legal showdown of, with key questions including about the AG's authority versus the statutory judicial appointment power and the enforceability of the judge's orders. So, according to that statute of 28 U.S.C. 546, the judges have the authority. So, I don't see in any way, shape, or form how the DOJ or Bondi could come out winning in all of this. It's difficult, if not impossible. The discussions that I was having, the person was saying, well, it's already been done, and this and that, assuming that what Bondi did was legal. But the problem is, what she did was not legal. It's questionable under separation of powers. And for it to be legal, would have to go through the courts, and Bondi and the DOJ would have to win an injunction, which in this case, if the statute is legal and it stands, I don't see that happening. So, it's important, I guess, to understand exactly how the law works. And from my interpretation, that's why I put this on X tonight, is because I'm reading the statute, I'm reading the synopsis, the scenarios, I'm looking at what's going on, and from what I read, I assume the statute stands, the statute is legal, and Bondi and the DOJ, they don't have a case. Plain and simple. But what I see is that many people tend to ignore certain laws because they want the scenario to favor, I guess, and it goes back to this term, they want the scenario to favor their ideology. And what we have to understand here is that this is not ideology that we're dealing with. Okay? We are not dealing with ideology. We are dealing with federal law and federal statutes. That is the problem that we have today. The division in our country, and I've talked about division many times in the past. The division in our country is clouding our judgment. We are ignoring law, and we are accepting ideology when we should be accepting the law, and we should be, what's the word I'm looking for? We should be carefully um, carefully analyzing and carefully um, we should be following the law. We should be analyzing the law, but we should be very scrutinizing. That's the word I'm looking for, with ideology, because ideology in this case does not necessarily follow the letter of the law, and we've seen that happen with everything that has happened in the first 6 months of this year under President Trump's administration. A lot of the things that he's done, and you can go back and argue whether it's right or not, but history shows that a lot of the stuff that has been done in this presidential administration has been done under ideology and has circumvented, and I use the term very specific, has circumvented certain procedures, certain laws, certain constitutional authorities that should not have been bypassed. You're using ideology to run a country, and you cannot totally use ideology when you have to follow the laws, plain and simple. And that's what a lot of people are not, it's not registering with them. They want to force follow an ideology, but they are ignoring a lot of federal laws to do it. And that is not the correct way of doing things. That's why you have issues like what's happened with Alina Habba. It's why you have issues where you have, for example, the recent executive order that was blocked by the courts for birthright citizenship. Trump bypassed certain procedures that should have been done, procedures that are not going to get done in this lifetime, and that is changing the law by constitutional amendment. He bypassed it by using an executive order. He circumvented that process by executive order. That's ideology. That's not following the law in any way, shape, or form. If we're going to make a difference in this country, we need to make a difference following the laws of the land. We cannot follow an ideology that circumvents and bends the laws at every other corner. It will not work. It will not work because the evidence shows all these cases in the courts that have blocked the president. It shows you that this is not the case. I mean, it's plain and simple. We have to follow the laws. We cannot follow ideology. And that's what makes these conversations like what I had earlier tonight. I've been called a lot of things. And I'm like, this is not right. I was told that maybe I'm a stupid ass crap. Well, the statutes that I'm referring to, they're just sitting there as decoration. I am reading the statute as written, forming a legal interpretation of what the statute says. And the statute says this has to be done a certain way. That's the law. You cannot say that because your ideology does not agree with that law law is wrong. It doesn't work that way. It will never work that way. You have to work with the laws you have, or get your legislature, our U.S. Congress, to pass a bill that the president can sign that will modify that statute. And if the issue is within the Constitution itself, it has to be a constitutional amendment, which is going to be next to impossible to do. But it has to be that way. You cannot unilaterally circumvent and bypass a law to get something done, because that's not right. It's unconstitutional. It's illegal. And I think that's the bottom line. That as Americans, as patrons of this great nation, we need to accept today. We need to recognize, okay, that we cannot use ideology. And I said this earlier many times. You cannot use ideology to circumvent federal laws and statutes or the Constitution. That's just my thought. I welcome your opinions on this. Maybe there's something I'm not seeing. I don't know. But your opinions are welcome. And I would really enjoy seeing what most people would think about something of this situation.